Morning, Pat. How's it?
Yeah, good. Good.
Morning all. Hi, Chantal, Martin.
Hey, Skura.
Morning. How's it?
I'm
Good,
here
Lizzie?
too. I'm just hiding around the corner.
Oh, very good. You guys have got some serious show lighting going on there. Very nice.
That's just industrial painters of our desk.
Yeah.
Looking good.
Nice lighting. Nice lighting.
Yeah. Beautiful.
My chair won't sound move.
Hi, Mike. Your link worked. Mike, boom.
I'm LinkedIn. Thanks.
Cool, great. We did a hospital tour the other day with Warren. It was really awesome, man.
It's good.
Yeah, really good to see.
Labor. 14 years of labor. Sorry.
78,500 square meters of hospital tour, Skura.
Yeah, very tiring,
Big
but
walk.
good to see.
Morning.
Morning, Brian.
Good morning. Hi.
Hi, Brian. Long time no see.
Yeah. Hi, Chantal. Looking
Nice to
forward
see
to
you.
your talk.
Yeah.
Johnson.
Are you keeping well?
Yep. Yeah, we're good.
Good.
Made it through
Yeah.
various challenges.
Absolutely. It's nothing like a good challenge.
Yeah.
Brings out the best in everyone.
Mm.
Prof. Peters, morning.
Good morning, Skura, Chantal, and Martin.
Hi, Wally.
Hello.
Hi, Wally.
Yes, I see Brian's there too. Good morning, Brian. Hi.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
There's lots of Alfreds here. Wally Peters, Brian Johnson. Who else? All we need is Kevin McGarry. And we'll be just about there.
Are you trying to tip the age balance?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh,
Oh,
You're
there's Ruth.
intimidating me, all of you. All the old school people out there listening.
no pressure, no pressure.
I thought you would all be tired out from yesterday and you'd still be in bed after that mammoth day.
No, in KZN, this is how we start the
We're
weekend.
not old.
Chantal 70 is middle-aged.
There's Karina. Everybody's here.
Then I'm very young, Mike.
Yes.
Teenager.
Mr. Mawisane, good morning.
Good morning, Skura. How's it been?
Join.
Hey, now it's okay.
Papa Ready. How are you?
Very well, very well.
Good, man. Good to see you guys.
Patrick, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Chantal. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, we can't see you, but we can hear you.
I'm fiddling with this device, but now I can see myself. Great, guys.
We thought you felt like your makeup wasn't good enough this morning.
No, man.
Pajamas.
Right.
All right. So great, guys. I think we can start. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Today we have Architecture Fabrik presenting. It's both Martin and Chantal. They've been practicing together for about 10 years now. I've worked with Chantel before at the Institute. She was our habitat liaison, especially with the city, just making sure that we know what the latest legislations are, tenders and all of those things. So she's been quite important to us as far as that is concerned. They apply sensitivity to buildings of different scales, large and small, as evidenced with the library that was at the Centrum, which was a container conversion. They've also been involved in that award-winning container conversion of the restaurant, Freedom Cafe, in Windermere. It's a very nice spot to sit in if you want to hide away from people. So Chantel, Martin, over to you.
Thanks, Gura, and welcome everyone, and thanks for being here after the very, very long day yesterday. I thought nobody would want to listen to anyone talk after yesterday. So this is us. Skura asked us to present, and I was like, oh, what have we done? We've done nothing. I don't know what we'd talk about. And I kind of put him off for a little bit, and then Ruben was put off. So that gave me a couple more weeks to think about it. And then I thought, well, it's been 10 years. We must have done something. We had a bit of a hiccup in 2017. My mom got sick and she came to live with us, and then I got sick, and so 2017, 2018 was pretty much a write-off. 2019, Martin had to finish his master's. He had started his master's at UCT when our son was 1 year old, so that was 2013.
It's a terrible idea.
And then UCT put an end to the course of urban infrastructure design and management and forced him to finish it. And that basically was end of 2019.
Yeah.
And then we all know what happened in 2020. But we carried on, and we've made it through, and we've got work, and we've kept our business going. Our staff components.
I'm so sorry, Chantal, I've muted you accidentally. Won't you please just turn your mic back on? Thanks.
Okay, I'm back.
And repeats.
Yeah, so our staff component's always been very small. The two of us are architects, so we kind of direct things very closely. Okay, I don't know why my keyboard's not working. Okay, there we go. So we bought a property in 2014, and we built our office. That's our office. That's where we are now. Luckily, it's on our property. So COVID.
Yeah, we were future-proofing for the apocalypse and didn't realize it's going to happen in 2020.
So we didn't actually have to work from home last year or this year. We could always come down to the office and escape.
And escape the children which were stuck at home trying to homeschool. So we managed to survive.
So that's inside. Martin sits on this side and I sit on this side. So we work very closely together. We're sitting on this side right now. And that's the light that everyone's saying is very direct on our faces. It's an industrial fitting. That's our family. I put this photo in because that was London 2020. And I love to say that we were in London in 2020 because no one went anywhere in 2020. It was January. This is Thomas, he's 9, and that's Amelia. And then that happened, and all of our travel plans. So Martin's parents live in Australia. So we were supposed to go to Australia this Christmas, but we will be washing dishes.
Yeah.
So when we decide, when I kind of figured out what we're going to talk about, we realized that a lot of the work we do really we go beyond what a normal architect does, and often we're not just planning and designing and constructing buildings, but we're trying to unpack what the project is before we actually start that design process. And so that's why I labeled this back to the source. But I think what we realized we really had to do was go back to the real source, was where we met and the project we met on. So in my 5th year of architecture, there was a lecture exchange with a university in Brisbane. And I went to Dennis Radford and I said, well, if the lecturers can exchange, then can students exchange? And he said, yeah, sure. So in my second semester of 5th year, I went to QUT in Brisbane and did my final semester there, and then they credited my subjects here in Durban, at UKZN. And as part of the SOP credits, I had to work in an office for 2 or 3 days a week. And I was just very fortunate to find an amazing office that actually became a bit like a family to us over the years. And a project came into the office, and it was this a residential project which was 2 hours south of Brisbane, and these 2 guys, Martin and Phil McMaster, were working on this project alone, and it was too big for them, so they brought it to our office in Brisbane where I was working, and I was allocated this job, and Martin came to the Brisbane office to brief us. And yeah, that's was 20 years ago, actually, almost this month, because that was 2001.
Cool. Can I just say there's a funny story here. We almost didn't connect and get together. I think after about 4 weeks of being impressed by this international young architect who traveled from South Africa, and I was so unfamiliar with the dialect and sort of the language, and I couldn't place it. And it's funny how your brain plays tricks. So her name was Chantal, and she had this funny accent, and I swore she was French. And it took me a couple of weeks to sort of muster up the courage and ask her out. And to my surprise, she said yes. And I thought, well, where's this going to go? We're from 2 different countries. And then on the day of, or the evening of our first date, her boss said, oh, do you like old cars? I said, yeah, I love old cars. And Bob had this lovely little old Porsche 356, one of those original Porsches, and Citroen CV. And he said, come, I'll take you for a drive around Brisbane. So I disappeared for 2 hours at the end of the day, driving these little sports cars around Brisbane, trying not to get speeding tickets. And Chantal's waiting there. I'm sure we had a plan. And an hour later, I rocked up and said, sorry, driving sports cars. I'm here now.
I nearly did leave, but a friend of mine, Emma, kept me there and said, just wait. You don't know where to go anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the project. It was this 1.5 kilometers of beach frontage. It was educational, learning kind of site with these houses. So there is this conference center on this side where it was kind of like a retreat, but there were also these kind of rustic shacks on the side. But it was the process of developing it that was, I put this photo in because we actually got married on this hill here. that's the hill above at the top here. It was the process of learning about community and family within the construction process that I think really impacted the way we practice. So this is Phil McMaster, the architect's wife. She's sitting with the contractors. That's the carpenter and the plumber and one of the general builders. The plumber actually lived on the site in a tent for about a year, but lots of crafting happening. These were hardwood shingles. So Phil, interestingly enough, he came to Durban in his 20s on a ship, and he moved through Hans Helen's office and Izzy Benjamin's office. So we had this immediate connection. And then he went to Portugal after that.
Yeah, he opened the office for Izzy Benjamin. So he was the office manager and partner of the Portugal office, and went through the whole coup, or the transition from democracy, I suppose, to a communist, well, not quite communist, regime. And yeah, and then he was, loving London and Portugal, but unfortunately, just with the change of realities, headed back to Australia. And I think that was it. That was his sojourn to South Africa. But yeah, it's just funny how you don't realize at the time how lives and people are interconnected. And later, I already had a kind of a South African connection without even knowing it.
And the construction manager, Stan, was South African, but he
Oh.
married an Australian.
Yeah,
So,
no, New Zealander.
yeah, she
no,
was New Zealand.
she was this tall New Zealand chef with this like amazing Afro kind of hairstyle, like proper Maori lady, amazing lady, Kay. And Stan was this short, coloured Jewish Cape Townian, and the odd couple, but they were just amazing people.
So we've kept in contact. Phil and Angela were working in South Africa. They've been volunteering around the world, and they came to visit us in Durban, luckily before COVID. So we've kept in contact with them. So this project, I think, really set the tone for all these things that we deal with in our practice. So yeah, Phil being the obvious first mentor for both of us. And he really brought in the fun aspect, the graphic, the little bit wacky. This is a project he did. He presented this at UKZN when he was here. I think it was 2019.
Yeah.
And just these little things that happen on the side of his contents page, shapes, colors, and patterns of Bhutan that charm, remind, and inspire. I think, you know, sometimes just being a bit light and fun and finding inspiration is so critical in our profession.
But also immersive, you know, like he has this amazing ability, to engage in the culture and the people. I mean, he's a people's person. So, you know, every person he works with instantly becomes a friend. And it's important to make those connections, you know, between the people that we work with, the people we work for, the people that build for us, the crafters. So a lot of this work was quite low tech and using the local crafts and arts and sort of indigenous knowledge of architecture and building. So as much as this was done for, I think it was the World Bank or something was funding this project, bus stops and developments in Bhutan. You know, the very first thing he did when he landed was create a sort of a community of artists and practice and got them involved and got them excited about these projects.
So there's little whimsical things which come off that aren't functional, but they're fun.
But they are functional, you know. Take a glass of wine out there with 20 friends, all trying to sashay past each other after a few too many drinks of wine, and you know, we obsess in this day and age about functionality, and but sometimes architecture doesn't always have to be functional. It just has to sometimes challenge and inspire. So it was always fun. His architecture was always fun.
No, it certainly must be an experience walking up there, right? Walking the clouds.
I don't know if I worked. I just, you know.
No. I'm saying walking on that walkway.
Oh no, walking on it. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
walking.
Yeah. Walking in the clouds. That's the function.
Yeah. And our other mentor, and the reason we came back to South Africa is Don Albert. So I worked for him for a long time. It was just the two of us for many years, and we went to Cape Town, came back. Yeah, there was a long history. He's in Australia at the moment, but we still keep in contact. He's the godfather of our eldest child, and he. This is the extract of his website. If you'd like, please go ahead and read it. There's a book that goes with it. But I think what he sort of instilled in me over the years was we don't pretend we know that we don't know, because if we know that we don't know, then we'll go out and ask the questions, and knowing what the questions are is your first step, and I think that's how we've approached our practice. We don't assume we know.
Sorry, that's our coffee machine switching on. Again, you know, I can't say working together for the last 10 years has always been easy. I think this is a good place to sort of touch upon this. We have very different sort of design approaches, and coming from Melbourne and Melbourne University of Architecture, School of Architecture, I was quite sort of impulsive and artistic, and you kind of flourish your pen and you come up with these bold statements, and you kind of craft your architectural intervention based on your gut feeling, and which was, you know, quite funny later on in South Africa, where you think we're always challenged by the realities a little bit more. You know, we have to make budgets stretch further. We have to deal with more complex briefs and sort of a more complex history. You know, I was often frustrated, or I couldn't believe Chantal wasn't more frustrated every time Don would come in and one day you're working on this design and this is the way it's going to be. And the next day he comes in and suddenly he's completely turned it on its head and turned it 360. And it's like, no, that was a dumb idea. We're going to now check this out. And by the end, you've gone through a lot of small iterations, testing, not just coming up with the one design and rushing to the conclusion. And that was a valuable lesson.
Always taking another perspective, stepping away and looking at it from another viewpoint.
I think Andrew Macon works quite like that.
Yes.
Turn things on its head.
So community is the first thing that really sort of interests us. And Lindsay Bush and she's here. I spoke to her a minute ago on this platform. She worked in Cape Town for a long, so we worked together at Don Albert's office, but we were at university together and we're still friends to this day. She worked in Cape Town for a long time developing the co-design methodology. And it just made sense to us if you're doing a project, especially if it's a public funds project, then you need to engage, and you engage before you take your pen and draw a line. So that the methodology, basically you take all the stakeholders, it's the people, it's the politics, it's the design community, and put them in the same room for a day. And we work through their knowledge, their history, their pain, and then come up with ideas about the opportunities that a project could present that could impact them all. So that at the end of the day, we have this environment which is a collective outcome. So we were appointed by eThekwini to do in Mpumalanga. It wasn't called Community Learning Precinct, it was called the Science Center, but we turned it into a Community Learning Precinct. And we got them to agree to do a co-design workshop with us, and Lindsay ran it. So that was 100 people for the day. We had, I think there were 12 groups, must have been 120 people, 12 groups of 10 people in each group, and you go through this program which Lindsay guided us through, and talk about their history, what their problems are, and then you start to imagine what it could be, how life could be, and each group is balanced with one designer, one student, one political person. So you have, well, as closely as possible, you have some sort of cohesive perspectives coming through. And then you start, well, I think this might have been putting up, what are our problems? How can we then deal with those? And then at the end of the day, you start to build what this might look like. Someone put their lunch on this model. And we ended up with all of these. There were 12 models. We grouped them in the end when we did the report at the end of the design, that there was this urban island that came out of it as a prototype or model, and then there was an urban edge. We ended up going with a more urban edge because we realized that safety and surveillance was quite critical in this community, a place to be where people felt safe, that could be in the afternoons and socialize and feel that there was a bit of a visual oversight. So the actual project was a science center, and that doesn't really exist in South Africa. And twice to design a site. So we went to Joburg, we saw those there, but they weren't custom built science centers. And we said to the client, we don't know how to do this when we don't know what's going in it. So we started to design what might go in it. And we started to what is science? Like, the science is everything. So we had envisaged this kind of life process running through, and how there was this little town, there was a geology display with the water, and then this town ended up in how the sewer, the electricity and everything kind of worked through the town. And then upstairs we went to astronomy. Luckily, we have traveled a lot in the past because Martin's parents are in Australia, and we try to see them every second year. And this year we were doing a science center. We were due to go to Melbourne, and Melbourne has 2 beautiful science centers. So we spent days in these 2 science centers with our kids, but it didn't feel like work because the kids just enjoyed them, and they're massive. You can spend 2 days in each of them. So watching them interact, and then looking at what's going on in the background, just to try and learn what these things do, and how we might adapt that to South African context was amazing. Unfortunately, that project didn't go ahead. There was some
land issues.
Yeah. So that was the science center, but it was sort of an extension to the brief that we also brought in some cultural stuff on the edges. And Jolie's had done this memorial wall garden a couple of years before. And there's that heritage center. Anyway, so it was basically this this Facebook box, and we used the brickwork to pattern the building, and then clipped on the circulation and a little bit of interest on the edges. Also, bearing in mind we needed to look at budgets and maintenance over the life cycle of the building. So we didn't end up rendering it properly. So the next section, housing, I actually pushed it into sustainability because we've been quite involved in housing over the last 10 years. And sustainability of the model that exists, and it did come up yesterday in the SAIA 21 conference. In 2014, with Royal Haskening, we were appointed to look at the regeneration plan for Komashi A. And this is just an aerial photograph of one of the sections, and I think most architects find aerial photographs fascinating, but I just found it interesting how this public space has been kept open, yet the density is so massive. So these are the old hostels from apartheid, the men's hostels time, and obviously that's now open to it's not just men, and then all this going on around it. And what do we do? Like, how do we start to intervene here? And so there's a few little blocks of 4-story walk-ups that happen. But I thought this was interesting too, because that city block or residential block is quite broken down, and then you end up with a medium-sized one, and then this huge suburban block where you've got these very informal passages through. And I don't have photos of this on the ground because we weren't allowed in there. They wouldn't let us go in. They would only escort us on the perimeter, on the main road, only allow Metro Police to escort us on the perimeter. So what happens is all the criminals are deep inside here, and Metro Police won't even come in here. So how do you start to unpack this and envisage a better life? That was just the grid that I thought was quite interesting. I'm not sure about the history of that. Yeah. So when you start to look at the GIS and we trace the aerial photograph, we've got this kind of an arrangement. And then you start to look at, okay, we think there's 40,000 people there. So how do we start to put 40,000 houses? And that's the little section of Komashi A. And I'd done this research and presented at the UIA in 2014 about housing and density, and how do we even start to unpack this. And sites don't, when you've got an 8.4 hectare site, this is a site in Durban, it's not always that, because you start to take out the environmental buffers, gradient steeper than 1.3, very hard to develop on. We need to stick a road in because we can't get access to all the houses by road. We designed a pedestrian ramp stair thing that went through it. So we end up with 42% of the site available for housing. So when you start to then look at this diagram and go, okay, if we did the freestanding house, we can quickly work out how many units we can get. If we did the duplex side by side, double story, we can quickly work out, we can extrapolate what we can achieve, and we can quickly try to motivate for 4-story walk-ups, but there's issues with the legality of giveaway housing. Yeah, so how do you, then you've got sectional title, then you've got body corporates, and it's just very complicated. So you end up with double story walk-ups as your highest density. So back to commercial A, we start to break up this big suburban sprawl into more bite-sized pieces, so we can get services, roads, but also water, sewer, electricity closer to the houses. We put in the green buffers. There was an environmentalist working with us. We have to get those people out of these vulnerable areas, and then you've kind of halved your site area. And then what do? So the brief was to develop the housing model. So, I mean, when you talk about 40,000 houses, how do you begin? So we built these Lego blocks, basically. Each little block is a 40 square meter unit. And we configured it in various ways. And then we said, okay, we could stack them all on top of each other and we could achieve that.
I think we're going through our container phase. So it kind of felt like containerized.
And I guess you don't want a very monotonous built environment. So if we could have this diversity of these little blocks that could stack together in various ways, we could promote a more diverse outcome. And when you start to look at that, this was off the 2012 Davis Langdon prices, so it's very outdated. This was a 2014 project. You start to go, okay, this project is going to cost between 8 and 11 billion, and that's not the bulk services, the roads. So what do we do? Because that's way more than the budget for KZN in its entirety. And if we do, if we do this in commercial A, they're going to live in these beautiful buildings. But then what about commercial B? What about Verulam? What about every other? And how do we? What do we do? So we were like, even this, like, you can't, in our minds, put 200 people in this kind of environment, and next door you're leaving these people in this environment. So at the time, lucky for us, Martin was doing his master's at UCT, and these kind of concepts were being introduced in that course. Reblocking, I don't know if any of you have heard about it, but you basically start to rearrange these environments so that you can start to get services in. You can get access for emergency vehicles, you can get lighting or electricity, some sort of sanitation. And we thought, okay, well, how about we just get the roads in so that everyone has equal access to services. So this is a very much community-led. You've got to rearrange things with the community, and then you have communal wash houses so that everyone has some access to water and sanitation. So we did a little sample to show them how it could work, that if we had to demolish all of those in red, like how we might consider, and we counted them to check we could get them all in, how we might rearrange them, and then how we might add some wash houses. But in the meantime, the main project was to get this ring road in so that everyone had vehicular access, but also access to services as a first layer of the development. So knowing that the master plan was going to eventually get to the end, but not upgrading 1% of people's quality of life and leaving the other 99% with no improvements. Rather, let's improve everybody's life by 5%, or even if it was everybody's life by 1%, then there's a kind of equal distribution. So we've also been quite involved in the social housing realm, which has been really hard. The way the funding comes through, the funding doesn't come through basically. So we've been working on this project for 4 or 5 years without a cent, and we just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and then we get pushed into, so the SHRA, the Social Housing Regulatory Authority, pulls money down from government and they distribute it to the social housing institutes. And yeah, and this came up yesterday in the Soaring 21 conference. It really needs to be reinvestigated how we deal with social housing, because then we were asked to answer these questions about municipal alignment, socioeconomic viability, and we did, because who else is going to answer them? So we pulled out all the documents that have been written, and we've got great policy and we've got very lucid documents about how we should do this. But when it comes down to it, there's a lot of obstacles. So yes, we ended up spending days writing about how this project would align with all of these things. It didn't really move the project forward. But at the same time, Skura mentioned this, we've been dealing with these kind of things. So this was an exhibition for the new library, which hasn't been built. So this is the new library, central. This is Gugulamini Park. We just wanted to bring some color and interest, and Garth Walker did the signage. He went and photographed some books, and we were just like, let's make everybody know that this is about books. It was supposed to be temporary, but it's been there for 7 years now. Just trying to bring some lightness and brightness and inspiration into the inner city. Now, during COVID, I went there about 2-3 months ago just to see how they were doing and have a chat, because the librarians, they are so helpful and interested in what they do, and they can't do their book share. So in the one container is a book share, and the other is an exhibition, and there's you can look at job seekers, can look there at the computer. And this member of the public has now set up this book share on the pavement outside. Because, well, it's not a book share, it's a secondhand book sales, because the library can't do their book share anymore because of COVID. I thought that was amazing. And then at the same time, I thought, wow, wouldn't this be great? What if we did this like all over the place in eThekwini? Like, and I wrote up this proposal for eThekwini, but nothing happened. And I pointed out to them how it would benefit the community if we could have these community learning hubs, I called them, throughout, and dispersed in very hard to get to places. This is a project which we did during lockdown. Unfortunately, it meant we couldn't visit it. We were working with development economists so I purposefully put the big projects next to the small projects and then back to the big projects. Well, this wasn't really a big project because I didn't really design anything. It wasn't brief. It was trying to determine how to develop tourism in Isimangaliso from an economic development point of view. And there's a limit to how many beds you can have in there. And then just looking at the cross-section of what exists there and how to integrate it. So there's Lake St. Lucia, the community, this very structured economy, and then this ecosystem. So everything needs to support each other. And yeah, we tried. We ended up having, so we had a whole team of civil engineers, environmental consultants. And the project was really this table, which is an Excel table which goes on for forever. And we assessed about 50 sites. We were supposed to sort of hone it down to 5 sites for development. And then when we started to think about it, we were like, well, the sites that rate really badly for access, services, water, electricity, they rate really highly for these kind of people that don't want any of that. They happy to have a dip in the ocean instead of a bomb. They don't need electricity, and how to get to places and no problem.
Please, got the mic on.
Andy, someone's got their mic on.
Hi, Wendy, could you please mute your mic?
Andy? Oh, it is.
That's right.
I can't unmute her. Can you mute
The doors is you.
Kim, are you able to mute Wendy?
Yeah, sorry, Kim's just popped out, but I'm looking at it. Just give me a second.
Thanks. Okay, she's gone.
I think a monkey's been eaten or a snake's been killed by a dog.
I think Martin was trying to WhatsApp it. Yeah, so when you rate a site, what are you rating it for? You're rating it for the people that want to use it, and then you've got this kind of person, and you've got this kind of person that wants lots of activity and wants to do stuff and wants to be active, and then you've got this kind of person who wants the option to plunge into the cool pool or to have the hot shower. And each site needed to be assessed in terms of each of these criteria, because this one needs the electricity and the water and reasonably good access, but it also wants privacy and remoteness. So it was an interesting project. A whole set of design guidelines came out of it, how to develop in that environment. If there's no water, if there's no electricity, the community also obviously has had to be considered in that, and how do we generate, it was an economic development project, so how do you start to improve people's access to job opportunity. Culture, this project, earlier this year, we tendered for it and won it, the Durban Cultural Precinct Placemaking Strategy, and that's quite a mouthful, and it was quite a project. We took a long time to dissect these words, Durban, cultural, precinct, placemaking as a thesis on its own, and strategy. Does strategy come after policy? And the absence of policy, how do we do a strategy? Because there is no policy on this. So we were like, well, Durban, what's Durban? Like Durban culture, I don't know, it's all of this. And interesting, because what happens in each of these environments, this blue sky, and I think that's where Durban tourism really got it right. We all operate under this blue sky and this climate that is really quite unique, I think, and probably keeps many of us here. So we started to try and unpack what is culture. Is culture going to the playhouse, to ballet? Is culture going to a concert, a music show? And we had two consultants working with us. It was SAIA KZN, who wrote the Cultural Precinct Policy for Cape Town, and is working in Joburg now in this field, and then Russell Klongwane, who's more directly understands culture in Durban. Just wondering how my time is. Okay. And what it comes down to is it's about who we are. And
so I'm just messaging Wendy. Sorry, Wendy's very upset. I'm just talking her down. It's okay. It's Zoom. These things happen.
But people are at the center of this, and the well-being of people translates into the well-being of communities. And eThekwini knows this, and they're trying to achieve this. They want everyone to live in harmony, but how do we live in harmony when we've got such diversity? So after we did quite a cohesive stakeholder engagement, it went out to about 200 organizations, and then we did the one-on-ones with the strategic stakeholders, and we came up with this action plan, which was broken into 4 sections: management, structure, infrastructure, which was quite easy for us, And then this thing that we coined as deep culture, where we start to unpack with the engagement we did. The crime was one of the main reasons why people were going to the city, to enjoy what it had to offer. So then you start to question crime. So, okay, who are these people? Okay, they're the homeless, they're the drug addicts, they're the illegal immigrants. So why are they there? And you start to unpack, okay, so, you know, the homeless people are there, the drug addicts, and that's something which is the wounds that is a result of the wounds of our past. But until we can get to the bottom of why we have these problems in our society, how are we going to deal with the crime? So one of the strategies was to put some projects together that would deal with each of these things separately. So, say drugs, because I know DUT has quite a lot of research about drug use in Durban. So we put DUT together with some artists, together with some people from the city, together with people on the streets, with community people that run the drug centers, and we start to workshop in a kind of a co-design way. We start to tell stories about why these people, let's unpack it, let's understand what led them to this. And then an end point would be to then communicate it to others, the story that gets unpacked through some art medium. So whether it's an exhibition or installation or performance. And so that's why we say designing cultural outputs for social impact. So there's an output which is cultural, that we impact society in some way to try and hear each other and see each other and heal the wounds of the past. So these, the lighter section of it, and the easier part of it was these beacons that would sort of line the main routes of the precinct with some signage and Wi-Fi and maybe solar power and all of that. So another placemaking strategy which also integrates communities. So the main precinct is around the City Hall. And this is an amazing document, it's like 100 pages, where the community, because pedestrian safety came up also as one of the big concerns in the stakeholder engagement. So, you know, it's really easy, it's cheap, let's do this. Let's put art on the streets and make these crossings really wide and make cars be a bit more cautious when people are crossing. So we're hoping to get to ETA in the next couple of weeks to discuss this with them. And then the other strategy, getting people out onto the streets to talk to each other, to hear each other's stories, to be together, to exist, draw from each other's experiences. So I was on Facebook on Wednesday and this came up and I was so impressed because eTechMini libraries, I mean, they're already thinking this and they haven't seen this proposal. They're thinking, let's talk, let's understand each other. And I think if we can do that, if people can see other people for each other, then we might be able to move forward. Anything else here?
No.
Heritage. So this is a difficult but small but really big project. We were appointed a long time ago and this project's been going, I think we're the third or fourth architects. The City Hall in Durban has 2-meter level change and it needs disabled access. So I'm not going to talk about it here because it's its own 14-minute presentation, but we are presenting at the Heritage Forum in the next coming weeks. So I'll ask him to put that out to everybody. So if they want to see what's being proposed, then you can join in there. We've been quite involved in education because our kids are at school and they find out we're architects and they ask us to do stuff. And this Westfield Junior Primary came to us and they said, we want to do this, want to do this, want to do this. I was like, hang on, let's just draw up a list. And anyway, how much money do you have? And so we drew up this list with them and we categorized it because a lot of the stuff was actually maintenance. And I said, okay, that's fine. Let's look at category C stuff, the capital projects. And when we put it on their site plan, they wanted to do something everywhere, but they had 5 million. And I guess this is where that sort of co-design methodology helps, because you make them make the decisions. You get them to tell you what the problems are, and you get them to say what the opportunities might be. So where one teacher wanted a pool, we put a pool there. Okay, you want a pool. And then they wanted to, there was all sorts of stuff. And we said, okay, it's fine, you want all of that, but now you've got 5 million. Let's talk how you're going to spend your 5 million. And then suddenly, okay, I can see the pool's not that important. Okay, I can see. And you start to have a cohesive view about your way forward. So when I asked them, okay, so what's the first thing we're going to do? That's a lot of stuff. That's 20 million rand. You've got 5. They realized, so this school over time has had more and more children, and their field just wasn't coping with the little feet. It wasn't grass anymore. So they said, okay, that's our priority. We need to make a place for children to play. So we did the lower campus master plan, where we put artificial grass, because there was just no way we were going to keep that grass growing. With a big, so shade became a big thing at East Durban, the big awning over the top. So we're not really talking about much of a building here. There's another classroom on the end there. The hall has become too small for the amount of kids. These kind of experiences on site kind of fill my heart, because they were pulling the foundations here for the big awning, and the children, oh my gosh, they were just so excited. The teachers couldn't take them away from that concrete truck. So that's during construction, the big awnings going up. There's some other cantilevered shade cloth awnings on that side. And then just watching how the children use the space. It's great. Lots of shaded, big awning that shades in that area, which has been amazing for COVID. Mm. But then master plans don't always end up. So we had said to them, let's do master plan. We're going to hem ourselves into the corner, and their tuck shop was supposed to be there. And then now that as the next phase, they're like, oh no, we actually like that grass. Don't put the tuck shop there. Find us another place for the tuck shop. So this is the proposal on the table at the moment. We've moved the tuck shop to that side. And in the meantime, oh, we need another classroom. So sometimes master plans don't even. In the other school across the road also said to us, okay, we need a multi-purpose school. So we're like, okay, but we're not just going to blindly give you a multi-purpose school. Let's understand what else you need. What are your other problems? We know you've got problems with kids going home in the afternoons and traffic and cars crossing kids. Can we start to unpack that? So we unpacked that, and they were pretty organized this lot. We were like, oh my gosh, you guys know what you're doing. This is great. Yes, we can give you a multi-purpose school. And then we discovered this little piece of red triangle, which is a fragment of a road reserve. This was a road, and it was deregistered as a road. And then this is the school. It's on 20 sites. And they had built a guard hut over it a couple of years ago. And it just became this nightmare. So we went to the attorneys and we said, can you remove this road reserve? No, you must get a town planner to do that. Okay, town planner, can you remove this? No, you must get a land surveyor to do that. Land surveyor, can you remove? No, you must get a town planner to do that. In the end, we're like, okay, we'll just do it. And we've done it. So we ended up submitting a SPLUMA application because, and architects can, believe it or not. It took us a few days to write the report, but we did it. Anyway, so another project we did in the Midlands, an amazing school that takes on post-matric students, mostly girls, that haven't passed matric to a level which is acceptable to get into tertiary education. So they go to the school for a year and they live there because their responsibilities in the home are often so great that they don't have time to study. So the school, they live there for a whole year and they redo their matric. So this, we tried very hard with the school to get funding, but it didn't actually materialize. Yeah. Relationships we found to be so critical in the work we do, and we find that the quality of our work is so much improved for the clients, either relationship with each other, if it's a residential project, and this was a residential project. We got a special mention for this project in the institute, where this was one of, I think, the nicest houses we've ever done. And I think it's a testament to the strength of the client's brief, and the relationship of the couple was so strong that the message that came to us was strong about what they wanted. And I think that goes for all projects, not just residential. And yes, we've done a lot of other residential projects, and it's and some relatively successful, and sometimes we're fighting between the husband and the wife, and we get phoned after the meeting, no, don't do what she said, and we try to stay away from that. But I think it also, in the institutional setting, if the client liaison is not in accordance with their superior, it also affects our ability to deliver. So that's why I say people and relationships is so integral to the work we do. And so often we start to try and equip the client liaison with some tools and mechanisms to convince their superior that what we really need to do is different or more, or more money than what they initially thought they needed. So that we can do the work, we can do great work, which is obviously what everybody wants to achieve. I say food because our kitchen, and I realize that this is like kind of a metaphor for the way we live our lives, always looking for, this is Ponyo, I don't know if any of you watched it, it's one of our kids' favorite movies, and we've had to recreate these soup bowls many times for our kids. But our kitchen's turned to quite an Eastern kitchen over the last, I mean, it was my obsession with health over the last few years, but yeah, we have this kind of Eastern kitchen. There's always a complexity and a bit of a zing to what we do. And I suppose, you eat a Thai curry and you're always trying to dissect, what's that flavor? Is it the lime? Is it the galangal? Is it the chili? And the complexity of what appears in that bowl is always so intriguing. And that's what we kind of look for in our lives, is that complexity, and then breaking down to what is in there, the source, like how do we get there? What made this what it is? And we have our comfort food every now and again, but you can see the difference between that there's no exploration in eating that meal. There's no zing. Or when we have that meal in our house, the mustard and every other thing comes out to make it a little bit more. Then I just put a few photos of our kids, because we've had the privilege to travel, and it's mostly to see Martin's parents. We got tired of going to Australia, so we convinced them a few times to meet us elsewhere. And this time we met them in France. And the impact of the built environment on people, I think, is just so important. This is in Paris. This is Thomas. He wanted to bring a stick home to South Africa to make a bonfire. Didn't quite understand, but for our children, I suppose that's the African in them. That the natural environment is so important. And yeah, we were playing in muddy puddles behind the Eiffel Tower. This was us in 2020. The natural science.
A lifetime ago.
But I think we've impacted our children. They know they're not allowed to be architects. We had to go see where Harry Potter was filmed, of course, but then it came out the other side, and I saw Lloyd's of London, and I was like, oh my gosh, I completely did not know this juxtaposition was there like that. So I was amazed. So often people say, why don't you, like, why are you in South Africa? You can go to Australia. And my answer is often, in Australia, you can imagine working in an environment like this, where everything's being labeled. It's got its position, there's a safe way to get to the top shelf. And in South Africa, we work in an environment like this, where we've got to decide how to form the structure, how to get to the top shelf, whether it's going to be dangerous to get up there, whether we want to put ourselves at that risk. And then we've got to decide, well, what we're ready for today. Is it taking that small box off the shelf and sorting it out? Don't take that box out, because the whole thing's going to collapse. And creating structure within the chaos, I suppose, excites us and interests us and keeps us here. And then I think within that chaos and that hugeness of the task, we've always got to remember that just take one little step, because if you try and that's always been our kind of motto, baby steps. If you try to take too big a steps, you might not actually get onto the first rung of that ladder. And then look at what you can do, look at what you do have. Because if we focus on what we can't do and what we don't have, then we'll never do anything. So this is my last slide, and I'm ending with this because it's so interesting. We've got this little artist, Amelia, she's 13. During lockdown, she just took to her pens and her paints. She didn't draw really before lockdown, and now she's drawing like this a year and a half later. And yeah, at least it's not architecture. And then we've got Thomas, who takes the opportunity to recycle anything and build anything. No box leaves our house; it all gets kept. And this was a champagne cork that he transformed into a little braai with some little tongs, and he actually cooked a piece of bacon in there. So I say the art of opportunity. Thomas always looking for the opportunity, and Amelia was looking for the art. Oh, that's us in Japan. So one time we traveled on our own.
Yeah, anytime. After kids.
That's it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Chantel. Thank you guys. I think that was lovely. I think what I enjoyed mostly is the journey. You guys meeting each other, your journey as a practice. I think that was absolutely beautiful. It's real, you know. So it's always easier to learn from someone when they interact or present from who they really are. So that was quite enjoyable. Thank you so much, Janet. I also enjoyed the fact that you have so many photographs of people in your presentation, and I think that speaks to how you approach your projects. You know, that you think of the people, you think of the kids when you are doing the school. I think that actually brings in the sensitivity to the work that you are doing. I'm looking forward to seeing what the inner city interventions that you're going to be talking to eThekwini about, how those would look like. Are those I saw some crossings and stuff. What else is planned for that one, Chantel? The inner city intervention.
We need a 40-minute presentation just on that. Yeah, it was broken into those different categories. There's the management structure and then the infrastructure.
It was more kind of trying to help eThekwini. I mean, look, there's no want of people that are passionate eThekwini that trying to get things off the ground and keep things moving. But these projects get moved between departments. They've got different mandates, different skill sets. It's coming from economic development. Arts and culture is not, yes, you can look at a precinct like that purely as sort of an entertainment precinct. And if it's an entertainment precinct, then you just want to sanitize everything, push all the community out and make it a pretty place for visitors and tourists. It's never going to work in Durban. It's never going to work in South Africa. And it's not the right thing to do anyway. So we kept the interventions of the architectural kind of acupuncture very small, just little ideas. But what was more important is that there's a list of potential projects, small little projects that they can keep putting out for the next few years. Build the cultural content, build the institutional structures between the stakeholders in the precinct, get the management structures in place. and make that as much community based as possible, and get as much diverse representation as possible. And and that's our challenge, especially now with COVID. How do you get everybody around the table talking not the same language? They must talk different languages, but they must, at least at the end of that discussion, find a consensus on what this vision of culture and Durban is. So it's a work in progress. It's really just the first step.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
we were quite trying really hard to do the proposal in such a way that something would come up and it wouldn't just be this report on the desk that just stayed there in those pages. So that's also why the interventions very, very little tiny little things that they can pick up, like ETA can pick up that one little thing. I'm hoping to present it to them. That's something that can be achieved with relatively little effort. Those crossings. Yeah, so it is still a work in progress, but it's a lot of energy and time to get these things, as everybody in this room knows, I think.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. May I please have a comment, colleagues, comment or question from anyone?
Skura, can I ask a question?
Yes, please can.
Chantal and Martin, I was intrigued with your social intervention project and trying to tidy up an untidy situation. But the one thing that intrigues me is the lack of participation of the very poor in the whole process. Have you made any attempt to look at self-help, particularly the Turner approach, and the use of the incredible enterprise, efforts, energy, and love that you actually get from people building their own accommodation, particularly in the squatter townships? Any effort to look at self-help and getting those people who build shacks to be involved in the whole process? Tell me.
That's the from our shoe.
Yeah.
That definitely forms part of that project. Look, with all of these things, like the quantum of the appointment was such a small step, and it was kind of like, and that's what we came to. It's like, you can take a top-down approach, spend billions, and not get anything done because the task is too big. And so you talk about the Turner approach, or and I know Amira Osman in Cape Town and UJ's. It's there's a lot of theory around. Just get the critical infrastructure in, and then find the support mechanisms and structures to get people building their own structures and filling in the spaces.
But we do have to do the things which they can't do, which is bringing the services. The services.
And then that kind of where we got with that project is that, guys, you can't redevelop this at this cost. You're not solving the problem. You're just going to take all the money that's not available, fix 10% of 10%. So rather, and we tried, take the approach of put the infrastructure in that people can't put in, but let them fill in the gaps in between. Have we moved anywhere further than that? No, I think
I think it becomes a political conversation because politicians want top structures.
They want to turn the side, they want to cut the ribbons, and it's difficult because I think, and it's a terrible situation we're in, because it's not to say that it's a wrong approach, but for a politician or any sort of political structure in South Africa, whether it's Cape Town, it doesn't matter which affiliation, to turn around and say, oh, sorry, we promised top structures, but we failed. Here, we'll give you what we can give you. Can you do the rest? Is kind of like defeatist. And then that just really the painful thing is that we've kind of got stuck in this Groundhog Day of not being able to move forwards because government doesn't have the money. People do have the will, but they need support. But at some point, everyone's got to come together and say it's not a failure. We just got to find a new way of moving forwards. That didn't happen on that project.
I think there are a lot of lessons we have to learn as well from India and from South America. particularly from the barrios, the barriadas and the favelas. And we really have to try and harness this incredible energy, which I'm afraid to say we're taking a step backwards. I hope all architects are aware of the new KZN law about squatter removal. I personally think that's an incredible step backwards, and I think everybody needs to read that act. It was promulgated only a month ago, which puts the onus on landowners to remove people, homeless people who have nowhere to go and have built their own shacks, without the effort going beyond that to actually try and make those places safe and healthy. Anyway, that's my take on it. But thank you very much. That was a terrific presentation. And thank you for all the love that came through. Well done.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. Kevin?
Chantal and Martin, well done. Always lovely to see someone that you spent a year with as a student to be doing so well. So congratulations to you all. Just a comment that I made also yesterday on the convention regarding, and Chantal, you reminded me about it with you having gone to study rather at QUT, and how difficult it was at those times. And QUT was an easy one for us at UKZN to be able to get the transfer because of the close association between the two schools. But the point I want to make now is that SACAP and South Africa are one of the signatories of the Canberra Accord, and it's a system of education that's recognized by the signatory countries, and so it's made it a lot easier for South Africans who have studied here any parts of the 11 recognized schools to have portability in their piece of paper that they've got. So even someone with a BAS degree it will be recognized at one of the other signatory countries. Australia's just dropped off the list because their institute is now no longer the registering body. They now have a kind of SACAP of their own, and it's a political fight at the present moment, which will hopefully be sorted out quite soon. But yeah, so it's good news. South Africa became a signatory in 2017. Cool. Just for information. Thanks, well done.
Thank you, Kevin. Chantal, it was actually clear that the library is actually being used. What I like mostly about it is that it's somebody who may not have been looking for a library. They've just been walking in the city center and stumble into it by chance. So the idea of replicating that elsewhere was a fantastic. But you say you haven't actually heard from the city as far as that is concerned.
No.
In terms of replicating it elsewhere.
Look, the other day we were with someone from SAIA Architects on this one project, and like I remember Nina saying it once, or maybe it was the new guys there, escapes my name. Alan. The guys sitting there have got like, I don't know, 200-300 projects on each of their lists. I mean, like, what practice or commercial practice would be able to manage 200-300 projects on a list? And you've got one person in amongst a department that has to follow. I mean, like, if you just do the maths, so we call it 40 or 50 projects. If you just say, I'm going to spend 5 minutes a week on this project, all you're doing is you're just following up on what happened in the previous email. You're not actually able to create architecture or really push a design team that's coming in as an external consultant. So I think the reality is when you've got a department that's helping other departments supply infrastructure, they don't want to take on more small bitsy projects. They're trying to clear a backlog rather than entertain something that could have a lot of potential. But then it's more projects and more small projects that go onto their books. So I don't know. Why don't we have design? I mean, I know it's been a long conversation for 20 years. Why don't we have design competitions? Why don't you do it? Put it out to the profession, put it out to the private sector, design and builds. Say, look, we've got 40 of these. Go for it. Like, does it have to be managed internally? I don't know. But it's just there's too much maintenance and just operational fixing that needs to happen, that any new project is kind of, it's just too much for them to take on.
Design competitions, definitely. I think that's a fantastic idea. Any other comments, questions?
I'd just like to say this, Kura, that was just such a beautiful, wonderful first few chapters of a very long story, I'm sure. And it's really appreciated. I just think the intensity at which you work. And I know exactly what Martin's talking about, because I'm the hamster on that wheel in my own practice. And spending the 5 minutes and 3 seconds and pause and like a I used to call myself a conductor, but I'm not that anymore. Not even that. So I'm jealous of just the intensity and just the care in which you spend time on working on your projects. Sometimes I do wish that I chose another life, but this is mine. And you work in such a beautiful environment, because I worked next door for a long time. And I see that at least the brick color hasn't changed.
Yeah, they've stayed true to it. They've looked after it. We make sure they look after it.
Yeah.
Well done on that.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, June.
Thanks.
Well done on that fantastic house as well. I mean, the lights on top and at the bottom. That is absolutely beautiful, guys. Well done.
Thanks, Kura.
Prof. Adebayo?
Hi, Chantal. Nice to see.
Hi, long time no see.
Yeah, I tried to attend this meeting now also to see what you people have done after you left the university, which was I'm really impressed that that also you went to KUT. I was there as a visiting professor many years ago, but maybe that time you are still in the high school. So. And it's a quite interesting university, and the way they structure their studio and all those things are totally different from what we have here, but they are not quite much different. What interests me is the attitude of learning to really see other places. And I believe while you were in the QUT, you might have gone to Sydney, Canberra, all those things, and see how the architecture relate to the context and all those sort of things. I think Brisbane is more or less like Durban, indirectly, I can say, in terms of similarity, and there's a lot to learn. So to me, that is what that really intrigued me, that you take it upon yourself as a young lady, dear going there alone, try to integrate with a new culture, a new environment. That really interests me from your work. And the other thing I see from your work, your exploration of various landscape and context and people and art and architecture is something that I like the way you try to look at them. But the what do you call it? The formal sector which you are trying to work in, I know most of you guys, when you go out of the university, you don't like to work most of them, and I was surprised to even see you doing something in that area. And I know the other colleague mentioned about self-help in Turner and all those sort of things, which is quite good. But the other aspect that is also good in those contexts is also the poor also know how to make spaces. And I think that methodology of spaces is what, and the metric of the spaces, how they compose them, how they create open spaces, cluster and all. If you really take your time and look and make a figuregram structure, you will be able to read that. So that I would like you to go further into that particular area, because there's a lot you will learn from them that one see, and then you can transpose that into a landscape within your urban design framework and your architecture. So, and that is because at a time when one study all those things, one is looking at it in terms of poverty, lower level, but the question one must always ask, what can I learn from these people? And I think that's one of the beautiful things that is much profound and even better than the modern layout that we do in a different form. So you present everything. And the other thing I like also how you use the Durban and turn the culture, the painting, the art and architecture work together. That was very interesting. Science and symbol. How do you make that as an integral part of architecture? I begin to look at various aspects of what you put together rather than me looking into a monumental building or all those sort of things. And if you take that further, in future, when you start doing interior design, bigger architecture and space making in building, you begin to understand what you've learned from all those things. So thank you. Nice seeing you again.
Yes.
And I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Ambrose.
Thank you, Prof. The comment about a figure ground in an informal settlement and the natural spaces in between is actually an important one. You noted it as well, Chantel, on the aerial view, because you could walk in an informal settlement and somewhere in the middle there's a tree, there's an open space, it's safer for kids to play, etc. And then sometimes we completely ignore that. When we plan, we just go do something rudimental and rectilinear, etc. That does not have life. So I think that's a really good comment there, Prof. I enjoyed that, looking at that, the aerial plan, Chantel. It's something that we definitely have to learn from. Adima.
Hi everyone. Sorry for the yoga clothes, but I suppose that's the benefit of these practice breakfasts is that I don't have to leave my house. I can just move from one thing to the next activity. Morning, everyone. Thanks for the presentation this morning. I think what it sets up for us is the potential, and I mean us as a profession, not just us as SAIA KZN, but I think it sets up the potential for building dialogue around two things for me from your presentation. First, around relationships with eThekwini and their respective client departments. I think that's something that we have struggled with, and I know that as a collective, I think I saw comments from BJ. I know from our office personally as well about how do we foster better relationships for better outputs, and that might be something I think that we need to consider within SAIA KZN as well as the profession. But I think more important is about this approach to housing and approach to understanding the realities of housing in a complex kind of post-apartheid city like ours. And maybe that's another, I know Chantal, you had started doing work on that with the Habitat Committee in SAIA KZN, and I think that's something that kind of stagnated, I think maybe after your activity and Jolese's activity, but I think it's something that we need to pick up on. And when you look at some of the projects that are coming out of UKZN from their master's theses, there's a lot of emphasis and interest put into understanding the ethics of research, the ethics of architectural outputs like social housing. And I think what this morning's presentation has done is maybe brought those 2 points out again as things that we really need to be championing and talking about, because there's so much that we can learn from the wealth of, I think the wealth of knowledge that we have in our profession, as well as the wealth of knowledge that sits out there in other organizations like Abahlali, and how we can really build and be better at what it is that we're doing, so that we don't have spectacular projects that remain speculative because we can't attend to them because we have governments who don't know how to better manage funding or don't have access to better funding, and maybe there are other ways that we can work with. And I think what's quite interesting was the point made on how do you start putting in these sorts of things, and is it maybe about understanding of putting in services and infrastructure, and what are the mechanisms that we can use. I think maybe this presentation for me was particularly interesting because of what it brought out in terms of what can we be talking about and building on. So thank you for that start of the morning. Thanks, Gura, for another great practice breakfast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Adima. I'm not sure if you all are aware, colleagues. Actually, the city has invited the panel again to open, and it is still open. Please note that, everyone, the panel is open for the city. I've had some discussions before when Nina was head of city architecture about competitions and all that. And at the time, I think there were hurdles as far as legislation was concerned. But it's a discussion that I can still continue with Alan, who actually is due to speak here, but he wanted to get the procurement situation out of the way, as you would have known when before the panel went out. Most people who were working with city architects would know this. There was a stop on the work and all of those things. So he didn't want to have a talk here before those things are sorted out. We still are hoping to have him on here. He has not refused at all. So I think since you guys work a lot with city architects, those things just came to mind. So please look out for that if you wish to be part of jobs that are happening at the city architects. I'm not sure if anybody else has a comment further. And I really enjoyed it, Chantel. I really enjoyed the realness of how you guys presented your work. I can tell you, are also a great team together. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing all of that, for us. If there's no further comments, guys, thank you again for joining in. I will see you again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend. Bye.